In Kenya, a nightmare that everyone hoped was over is, well, it's repeating itself. Today, we're going to walk through a deeply disturbing new discovery that has tragic echoes of a recent national trauma. You see, it really seemed like the horror of the 2023 Shakahola tragedy had been contained. But a shocking new chapter has just opened. The discovery of more mass graves suggests a deadly ideology was never really buried with its victims. So, this all starts in a village called Binzaro. Investigators have uncovered a grim new site here, and it's reviving all the fears of the cult activity that just shook Kenya to its core only a year ago. Now, the first big red flag here is just how close this is. Binzaro is only a few kilometers from the Shakahola forest, the site of that 2023 cult massacre. And this wasn't some random discovery. The investigation kicked off because a whistleblower came forward and led authorities straight to a 5-acre plot of land and the horrors that were hidden just beneath the surface. So, the big question is, what did they find? Well, the facts and figures that are starting to emerge, they're painting a really, really grim picture of the scale of this new tragedy. Let's start with this first number, because it's staggering. On that single plot of land, investigators have already identified more than 20 separate graves. Think about that. This isn't just one or two isolated incidents, it's a burial ground. And from those 20-plus graves, the human toll is already mounting. In just the first 5 days of digging, authorities have exhumed the bodies of at least 24 people, and they've made it very clear they expect that number to go up. But the scene is even more complex than just the graves. Authorities have already made 11 arrests, and that includes the woman who actually owns the land. On top of that, forensic teams are dealing with scattered human remains, skulls, bones, just found around the site, which makes the whole task of identification an absolute heartbreaking challenge. Now, you might be wondering if this is some kind of copycat, but authorities don't think so. They do not believe this is an isolated incident. In fact, all the signs are pointing directly back to the Shakahola cult, and the connections, they're chilling. And those alarm bells are ringing for a reason. Remember, back in 2023, the tragedy was led by Paul Mackenzie, and it was all centered on this horrific starvation ideology. Well, now at Binzaro, investigators suspect that actual survivors from that original cult are involved, and they're pushing the exact same deadly belief system. The pattern is just tragically familiar. As you can imagine, this discovery has kicked off a massive official response. The pressure is on for pathologists, for detectives, to find answers, not just for the case, but for the families who are now living in fear. And this plea right here, from Dr. Richard Giroge, a government pathologist on the ground, it just captures the human urgency of this whole investigation. This isn't just a crime scene. It's a place of profound loss. And this call for families to come forward, it's a desperate race against time to give names back to the nameless. So what does that process actually look like? Well, it's this meticulous 3-step race for the truth. It all starts with court-ordered exhumations to carefully recover the remains. Then comes the intense analysis, postmortems, DNA tests, all of it, to figure out who these people were and how they died. And finally, the most painstaking work of all, matching those results to the DNA of families who fear their loved one is among the dead. And Dr. Njiworog's words here really underscore just how grim and detailed this work is. It shows they're not just dealing with intact bodies, but with fragmented remains that need advanced DNA science just to see if they can be pieced back together, all in the hope of identifying even one more victim. So you'd think with all this going on, we'd have some clarity. But honestly, this discovery in Binzaro has left authorities and the entire Kenyan public with far more questions than answers. Let's look at some of the profound uncertainties that are now hanging over this entire case. The first, most immediate question, of course, is about the victims themselves. Are these people who were part of that original Shakahola group and just relocated? Or, and this is a really terrifying thought, are these new followers, people who have been drawn into this deadly ideology since the 2023 tragedy? And that leads to this deeply unsettling question about the network itself. I mean, how is it still active? Is this ideology being directed by leaders from inside a prison cell? Or have their followers just been able to continue this deadly work completely unchecked in totally new locations? And that leaves us with the final, and I think the most haunting question of all. After the national trauma of Shakahola, after all the arrests, the media coverage, the government promises, how could something like this happen again, right under everyone's noses? It's a question that demands answers, not just for the victims of Binzaro, but for the safety of an entire nation.